Ryan, 27. Nothing special about me, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I IT support at a mid-sized company. I fix people's email and restart their laptops and get called a lifesaver, like I cured something. Gym 3 times a week when I don't talk myself out of the third one. Rent an okay apartment, drive an okay car, live an okay life. The one thing I actually had going for me was my people. Same core friend group since middle school. The kind you never have to explain yourself to. Guys, girls, all of us just grew up in the same messy pile and never bothered to leave it. A few of them I'd known so long, they were basically load-bearing walls in my life. Right at the top of that list was Zoe. We met when we were around 12, got seated next to each other because our last names landed close together on the roster. Never once weird between us, never a crush. Never any of that undertone people always assume has to be there. She was the friend who'd call me at 1 a.m. because her car died in a parking lot. And I'd drive out to get her, and she'd have done the exact same for me without thinking twice about it. She knew my whole family. She stood in the back at my grandmother's funeral. She helped me move apartments twice and only complained the normal amount. Keep her in mind because she matters to how all of this goes. The rest of the group filled in around that core. There was the buddy I've played games with online since we were kids, the couple who've been together since school, a few gym guys, a couple women from way back who were just as much part of the furniture as anyone. Solid, low drama, the kind of group you're genuinely lucky to still have at 27. We did the normal stuff, someone's place on the weekend, a bar sometimes, a group chat that never really stopped going. That's the whole foundation, and I want it clear before the rest, because the rest is basically me setting fire to it with my own 2 hands. So, a while back I meet Kayla. Friend of a friend, we get talking at somebody's birthday thing at a bar, and we just click immediately. She was funny, she was quick. She actually asked me things about myself instead of waiting for her turn to talk. We swapped numbers that night and were texting nonstop inside a week. First couple months were genuinely good, and I'm not going to rewrite history to make myself feel better about the ending. We built our little routines fast, our shows, our takeout order, the whole comfortable machine of a new relationship clicking into place. I was into it, I was into her. I honestly thought I'd gotten lucky for once. She was the kind of person who could make you feel like the most interesting guy in the room, and early on she pointed that straight at me. Told me she loved how loyal I was, how I still had all my old friends, how rare that supposedly was in a guy. Which is worth noting because the exact thing she praised at the start became the exact thing she went after later. We spent most of that first stretch just at each other's places, which felt like closeness at the time, and reads a little different now. Looking back, the world was already quietly shrinking down to just her and me. I just experienced it as romance. The group met her a few weeks in, and it went fine on the surface. She was charming with all of them, remembered names, asked the right questions, but afterward, in the car, she had a read on every single person there. This one was a lot, that one gave her a weird vibe, and she clocked pretty fast. Which of my friends were women? At the time I thought that was just her being observant, maybe a little socially sharp. Looking back, I can point at that car ride as the first crack. But living inside it, I filed everything under, she pays attention, she cares about us. It started so small you could talk yourself out of noticing it all. I'd get a text from a woman at work about swapping a shift, and Kayla would go quiet. Not loud angry, just a very specific flavor of quiet that makes you feel like you did something wrong without ever being told what the something was. Ask what's wrong, get nothing, I'm fine. Anybody who has ever been alive knows exactly what nothing I'm fine translates to in the field. Next, it got a little less subtle. I liked a photo one of my gym friends posted, nothing to it. A picture of a deadlift she'd been chasing for months and finally hit. That night, Kayla brings it up like she's presenting an exhibit to a jury. So, who is that exactly, and how do you know her? I explain, gym friend, we spot each other. That is the entire story start to finish. She nods, but you can feel it getting quietly filed into a drawer somewhere for later use. Another morning, Zoe sent me a good morning text, same as she'd been doing for literal years, nothing behind it. Kayla caught it over my shoulder, and from her reaction, you'd think she'd caught me climbing out a window at 3 a.m. There was a fight about that one, or not a fight exactly, more of a long cold evening where I kept apologizing for something I couldn't quite name. Around then, Zoe actually invited me to a thing, some low-key hangout, and I made an excuse and skipped it. Told myself I was just busy that week. Really, I skipped it because I already knew what the conversation afterward would cost me, and I'd started prepaying to avoid it. Once, early on, I actually stood up for Zoe properly, told Kayla plainly that she wasn't going anywhere, and that was just a fact of my life. That did not go well. The temperature in the apartment dropped for about 3 days. No yelling, just a wall. Eventually, I was the one apologizing again for not understanding how it made her feel, even though I hadn't done anything but keep a decades-old friendship. That was the moment I should have clocked the shape of it, and instead, I just learned to stop defending anyone out loud. The questions kept coming, always in a very particular packaging. Never once, "I don't trust you," which would at least have been honest and something I could actually respond to. Always dressed up in nicer language than that. "I just have boundaries. It makes me uncomfortable." A lot of men don't even realize how their behavior lands on other people. That last one she leaned on more than a few times, and it always came out sounding perfectly reasonable in the moment. She had this whole worked out theory about it too, and she'd lay it out calmly like she was explaining something obvious to a slow student. That men keep women around as backups without ever once admitting it to themselves. That guys are sort of low-key wired toward this thing, where they quietly collect female attention and dress it up as friendship. That it's a subtle kind of toxic, baked in, and a genuinely healthy man would want to clear it out of his life to protect the relationship he's actually in. She talked about male toxicity the way you'd talk about weather, just a background condition every man is carrying around, where the good ones are the ones who learn to manage it and apologize for it. At the time, I thought she was being thoughtful and self-aware and mature about relationships. I actually respected that she could name her feelings so cleanly and put a whole framework around them. That was the mistake, respecting the frame before ever once checking what the frame was quietly being used to do. Those good morning texts turned into a recurring standing topic. In Kayla's head, Zoe stopped being his oldest friend and quietly became the girl who texts him. Didn't matter that Zoe had a boyfriend of her own she was serious about and happy with. Didn't matter that I'd known Zoe longer than I'd known how to drive a car or hold down a job. The story Kayla told herself, and slowly started telling me, was that any woman standing anywhere near me was a threat, and my job as a decent partner was to clear them out so she could feel secure. I want to be fair to myself and to her both here. I did genuinely want her to feel safe. That part was never fake. If I'm with someone, I don't want them lying awake at night, feeling sick over where I am and who I'm talking to and whether I'm slipping away. So I started bending, a little at first, then more. Quit replying to the gym friend outside of strictly gym logistics. Went noticeably colder with a couple of the women at work. Kept everything flat and professional. No jokes, no warmth. Nothing that could ever be screenshotted and shown to a jury. Told myself the whole way through that this was just me being considerate of my girlfriend's feelings, that this was what commitment looked like. And every single inch I gave, the line quietly slid a little further out into new territory. That's the part nobody warns you about while you're standing in it. You think each concession is you finally solving the problem for good. Really, you're just showing the goalpost exactly where its new home is going to be. There was a dinner around then where a woman I barely knew, a friend of a friend, sat near me and we talked for maybe 10 minutes about nothing. Kayla brought it up the entire drive home. Then again the next day, dissecting how I'd leaned in and laughed too much. I hadn't leaned in, I'd been polite, but by then arguing the facts just extended the sentence, so I apologized for a crime that didn't happen. After enough of those, I started managing myself in public before she even had to. Going flat and quiet around any woman just to skip the debrief later. That's the part that's hard to explain to people, that the leash eventually stops needing a hand on it. My friends started to notice I'd gone quiet in the chat, that I was skipping things, that I'd sort of receded. One of the guys asked if everything was all right, said I'd basically vanished. I brushed it off, said work was busy, said the relationship was going great, both of which were half true at best. A while into all of this, we hit the big one. It wasn't a screaming blow-up, I'll give her that much. Screaming was never her style. We were at her place one evening, I honestly couldn't tell you what we'd been doing right before it, some normal, ordinary night. She sits me down and puts on the calm, serious voice, the one that always means a prepared speech has been loaded and is about to fire, lays it out flat and clean and rehearsed. Either I remove the women from my life, all of them, contacts, socials, group chats, the entire footprint scrubbed, or she can't keep doing this relationship with me. She framed the whole thing as her having been endlessly patient and communicating her needs, while I kept failing over and over to meet her halfway. Halfway, in this specific case, meaning the entire way, with her own contribution to the compromise sitting at exactly 0. She had an answer ready for every objection before I'd finished making it, which I read at the time as her being thoughtful and prepared. Now I read it as a script that had been rehearsed, because a genuine conversation doesn't come preloaded with a rebuttal for every door you might try. I pushed back, and I pushed back hardest on Zoe specifically. Told her Zoe is basically family to me, that this one is genuinely completely different, that there is nothing there and there has never been anything there. Kayla had a response loaded and ready to go, because she always did. If she's really just a friend, then deleting her costs you nothing, right? If it's nothing, then why are you fighting me this hard to keep it? And I'll be straight with you, that logic sounds completely airtight when you're worn all the way down and you just want the pressure in the room to finally stop. I sat there and actually turned it over in my head like it was a fair point instead of a trap with a nice bow tied on it. Here's the part I'm genuinely not proud of, and I'm not going to soften it. I did it. Sat right there on her couch, opened my phone, and started going through it name by name. The women from work, deleted. The gym friend, deleted. A couple of old friends from way back who happened to be women, deleted. And then Zoe. I hovered on Zoe's name for what felt like a genuinely long time, thumb just sitting there, and I fed myself the exact line Kayla had handed me, that if it's really nothing, then it really costs nothing. So I deleted the oldest friend I have on this earth to make a woman I'd been seeing for a few months feel more comfortable in the moment. Zoe clocked it almost instantly, because of course she did. She always paid attention to everything. She got one message off before the block finished going through the system. Just, seriously? One word, one question mark. And then nothing else, because by the time I'd have typed any kind of reply, I'd already cut the thread clean. And I didn't reply. Drove home that night feeling weirdly hollow, the kind of empty you get after you've won an argument you shouldn't have been having. Opened my contacts at a red light and the list looked shorter, wronger, like a photo with people cropped out of it. Told myself that feeling was just guilt and guilt fades, which is true, but not the way I meant it. Told myself I'd explain the whole thing to her later, once things had settled down and calmed and there was room to breathe. Kayla, on her end, was completely over the moon about it. You genuinely would not believe the turnaround in her. It was night and day. Overnight, she was the girl from the first month all over again. Affectionate, easy, light, planning little weekend trips, telling me how much closer she felt now, that there was nothing standing in the way between us. And I lapped every drop of it up, because that is exactly what you do in that spot. You accept the reward for the thing that scooped you out. And then you relabel the reward as proof you made the right call all along. For a few weeks, it was honestly, genuinely pleasant. I took the discomfort, put it in a small box at the back of my head, and made a deliberate point of not opening the box. Fed myself the line that grown men make sacrifices for their relationships, that this was just what maturity actually felt like from the inside. Fed myself her theory, too, that guys who keep a whole pile of female friends around probably are keeping backups exactly like she said, so really I'd done a clean and healthy and adult thing for us. Basically borrowed her entire opinion of me wholesale, because holding on to my own opinion would have meant sitting with what I'd actually just done. The group chat kept moving without me in it, and I muted it so I wouldn't have to watch. Every so often I'd catch a photo from something they'd all done together, some dinner or trip, and I'd feel that box in the back of my head shift a little. Then Kayla would walk in, or text something sweet, and the box would go quiet again. I got very good at trading a whole life for a good evening, and telling myself it was a fair deal. There was a wedding around then, someone from the old group, and I didn't go. Told them Kayla and I had a conflict that weekend. Truth is, I didn't want to stand in a room full of people who'd notice everyone I used to talk to was suddenly a stranger to me. A mutual friend reached out during that stretch, said Zoe was pretty hurt, asked what was going on with me. I gave a vague non-answer and let it drop, because looking straight at it would have cracked the box open. Skipped a group thing around then too, a birthday I think. Told them I had plans. The plans were sitting on Kayla's couch feeling fine about myself on purpose. And then the box got kicked wide open, and I was not the one who kicked it. We're at a casual get-together, mostly mutual acquaintances, nothing special about the night at all. I'm making small talk with a guy I sort of half know, more from Kayla's side of things than from mine. And completely offhand, zero malice, not trying to detonate a single thing, he goes, "You and Kayla and Blake hang out a lot, huh? You three always seem to have something going on together." And I go, "Who's Blake?" And the guy sort of chuckles like, "I've just made a joke." I had not made a joke. I had, up to that exact second, never once heard the name Blake in my entire life. So now there's this name sitting in my skull for the rest of the night, like a splinter jammed under a fingernail. I did not want to become the guy who goes digging through his girlfriend's phone. Genuinely didn't. I'd always privately thought that guy was pathetic and insecure. But who's Blake followed immediately by a near stranger laughing at your face does things to a person. It just does. So, a bit later that stretch, her phone's sitting unlocked on the couch cushion, and she's in the other room for a while. Not my finest hour, and I'm not going to pretend it was, but I looked. Blake was not a splinter. Blake was a whole, full-grown tree with a deep root system. Daily messages, and I mean truly daily, first thing in the morning, straight through to well past midnight, no gaps. Lunches, just the two of them, several times a week. The exact kind of lunches that had somehow never once gotten mentioned to me in passing. Calls that ran an hour and a half, some of them logged well after I'd already gone home for the night and gone to sleep. And the actual content of the thing, that was the part that really landed like a punch. You're honestly the only person who actually gets me. I can talk to you about stuff I genuinely can't say to anyone else in my life. A private nickname for him, a whole stack of inside jokes. The entire dense little ecosystem two people build up only when they are extremely close. And Blake, as it turned out, wasn't even the full picture on his own. Scroll a little further, and there's an entire roster back there. Guy friends from her old job, guys from her hobbies, guys she'd grown up with, her exact phrasing, thrown around freely. One of the grew up with guys had a message history that looked an awful lot like the way she used to talk to me at the start. The precise category of person she had made me scorch out of my own life down to the very last contact and photo. Except every single one of hers was still sitting right there, untouched, active, close, warm, completely intact. There was even a running thing where she'd tell Blake how controlling some guys are, how lucky she was to have a friendship as healthy as theirs. Reading her call me the problem to another man in the middle of doing the exact thing she'd banned me from was its own special little moment, and the timing was the part that really got under my skin once I did the math. All of this had been running the entire time. I was sitting on her couch deleting Zoe to make her comfortable. I set the phone back down, and I said absolutely nothing that night. Needed to sit with it first, because if I'd opened my mouth right then, whatever came out was not going to come out clean. And I refused to hand her a nice, tidy, look how he yells at me story to pass around. Gave it a couple of days to cool all the way down. Picked a calm moment on purpose, no ambush, because weirdly enough, I still genuinely wasn't trying to have a fight about it. Just laid it out flat, using the same structure she'd used on me, brick for brick. Told her I'd been thinking a lot about our boundaries, putting her own word back into her hands on purpose. Said it seemed only fair the rule ran in both directions, if it was a real rule and not just a leash. So, in the spirit of the relationship and mutual comfort and safety, she should go ahead and delete Blake and the rest of the guys, exactly the way I had done for her. And I watched that calm, serious voice evaporate in real time, right there in front of me, in about 2 seconds flat. That is completely different. Blake is just a friend. We've known each other forever. You don't get to compare that. You're being controlling right now. This is the exact insecure, toxic thing I was trying to warn you about the whole time. And there it was, one more time, toxic, pointed straight at my chest, for requesting the identical thing she had demanded and gotten from me without blinking. I stayed level, kept my voice completely flat, refused to give her the scene. Said quietly, "Zoe was just a friend too. I'd known her forever too, word for word what you just said about Blake." And she came right back with, "That's not the same thing at all." So I asked her, plainly, why not? And she could not answer it. She tried, and I'll actually give her credit for trying, ran at, "It's different because 3 or 4 separate times and never once managed to land the plane on the runway." The closest she got was that a man keeping female friends is a red flag and a warning sign, while a woman keeping male friends is just her being a warm, sociable, emotionally healthy, well-adjusted person. Said men and women simply aren't the same when it comes to this stuff. That when a man befriends women, it comes from a bad place inside him, and when she does the exact same thing, it comes from a good place. Told me straight to my face that I wouldn't be able to see the difference because I wasn't willing to sit down and honestly examine my own behavior and my own male toxicity. When the "it's different because" attempts kept failing, she changed the subject to me. Started pulling out a list, apparently kept somewhere in her head the whole time, of small things I'd supposedly done that proved I was the toxic one. A joke I'd made months back, a time I'd looked at my phone during dinner, the fact that I was even capable of going through her messages at all, the deleting of my own friends, the things she'd demanded, somehow got folded in as further proof of my issues, like I'd done it to myself, out of guilt. Every card she had left got played to move the spotlight off the simple question I'd asked and back onto my character. So, let me just make sure I had the rulebook straight in my head. The rule was real, serious, and entirely about safety and respect when it applied to me and cost me my friends. And it was imaginary, offensive, controlling, insecure, and toxic. The second it got applied to her and cost her anything at all. Same rule, top to bottom, not a comma different. She'd just never once in her life pictured it getting picked up off the floor and calmly pointed back the other direction. And that is the exact moment it fully clicked, all at once, the whole shape of the thing. I hadn't deleted those people to protect anything real or worth protecting. I'd deleted them to feed a double standard that was only ever engineered to run in one single direction. I had personally cut off the oldest friend I have on earth, a person who stood in the back at my grandmother's funeral, so a woman who had a Blake on speed dial could feel a little more comfortable at night. I didn't yell, and I want that clearly on the record for anyone keeping score. Inside, I actually felt very quiet and very still, because the loud part of it was already over and done. It had all happened silently the second it clicked. Took my phone out, right there, while she was still mid-sentence about my insecurity and my toxicity, and my inability to self-reflect. And I used her own script on her, close to word for word, because honestly, she'd written it so well the first time around, it deserved a second airing. You're right, boundaries matter. This makes me uncomfortable. And if I'm really your partner, then removing me shouldn't cost you anything at all, right? Deleted her number while she sat there and watched me do it. Then unblocked Zoe and opened up a fresh message to her, right there in front of Kayla, so she got a clear look at exactly who was going back in as she was on her way out. Then blocked Kayla, one platform at a time, slow and deliberate, while she watched that part happen too. She genuinely did not understand what was happening to her in that moment. You could read it right off her face in real time. The confusion, then the alarm. This was very much not in the plan. The plan had been that I apologize, that I grovel a bit, that I prove all over again that she came first. And then we move forward together with her entire social world, sitting there intact and mine still salted earth. The plan had absolutely never included the rule getting up, walking home, and knocking politely on her own front door. She switched tactics maybe 4 separate times, inside about 5 minutes flat. First, I was overreacting and needed to calm down and stop being dramatic. Then, I'd apparently misunderstood what Blake even was, which I'd read the whole thing. But sure, go on. Then we should talk about this like adults. A phrase people always seem to suddenly rediscover the exact instant consequences show up at their door, and never 1 single second before. Then, when none of that moved the needle even slightly, out came the real anger. I was toxic, I was insecure, I was exactly what she'd always known men really were underneath. I'd finally shown my true colors. Funny thing about those true colors, they only ever appeared the very moment I stopped quietly doing what I was told to do. I left. Didn't slam anything, didn't make a big speech, didn't need one, just got up and walked out the door. And then came the fallout, which honestly outlasted the good part of the entire relationship by a pretty wide margin. Calls from numbers I didn't recognize, since I'd already blocked every single one that I did recognize. Messages routed to me through her friends. Kayla just wants to talk. You at least owe her a real conversation after all this. The story going around got rewritten at genuinely impressive speed, considering how recent it all was. In the version making the rounds, I'd gone through her phone like a total psycho, and walked out on her completely out of nowhere for no reason at all. The part where she made me delete every friend I had first, and the part where a guy named Blake existed, both kept quietly falling out of the retelling somewhere along the way. Strange how those two specific details never once seemed to survive the trip through the grapevine. A mutual acquaintance actually confronted me about it at one point, came in hot with her version already loaded. I thought about laying the whole thing out, the phone, Blake, the roster, the timing, all of it. And then I just didn't, because the people whose opinion of me I actually cared about weren't the ones running with her edit anyway. Let them have the story. It wasn't worth the breath. Ran into her once after all of it, by accident, at a place we'd both apparently kept in the rotation. She went straight to the wounded version, said she couldn't believe I'd throw everything away over nothing, over a misunderstanding about a friend. I just said Blake's name, once, flat, and watched the wounded look flicker. Didn't stick around for the recovery, just paid and left. And that was the last time we spoke. For a while there were still ripples. A friend of a friend testing the waters, someone asking if the story going around was true. I stopped correcting it pretty fast, because the truth was already safe with the handful of people who mattered. Here's the part I'll fully admit I actually enjoyed. No real point pretending otherwise at this stage. Blake, as it turned out, was considerably less interested in Kayla the exact second she suddenly had all the time and all the attention in the world to aim directly at him, while she was busy juggling me and simultaneously being the glowing warm center of his entire universe. Great, thrilling, endless fun for a guy like that. The moment she was completely free and calling him at all hours actually needing something real back from him, he got very busy very fast, apparently. The whole, "you're the only one who truly understands me" arrangement apparently had a hard expiration date stamped on it the entire time. She just never saw it. So she cleared her entire board, every piece, for a guy who, it turned out specifically, did not want the board cleared in the first place. That particular outcome, I did not plan or engineer or lift a finger toward, and I genuinely can't say it made me sad to hear about it later. The part that actually mattered, though, the part I actually gave a damn about, was Zoe. I did not deserve a fast answer from her, and I did not for 1 second expect one. The message I'd sent her was long, and at bottom it was just me, flatly owning the entire thing start to finish. No excuses in it, no, she made me do it, because nobody made me. I picked the phone up with my own hand and did the whole thing myself. I was wrong, I know exactly how it looked, because it was exactly that, and I'm sorry. And you don't owe me a single thing back for this. She left me on red for a good long stretch, which, completely fair. I'd honestly have done a lot worse in her spot. When she finally did answer, it was not warm, not at first, and I hadn't earned warm, and I knew it. Told me flat out that the seriously text going into a void unanswered was one of the genuine low points of that whole stretch of her life. That she'd spent years being the friend who actually showed up every single time and then got deleted like a spam contact, so a girl I'd known 5 minutes could feel special for a few short weeks. I didn't argue a single word of any of it, because every word of it was completely true, and I knew that too. At the first coffee, she didn't go easy on me, and I didn't want her to. She asked me straight if I'd have ever undeleted her on my own, or if it took getting burned first. And I told her the honest answer, which was that I didn't know, and that not knowing was its own kind of answer. She respected that more than any grand apology I could have made up. The second coffee was lighter, some old joke came back, and for a minute, it just felt like it used to, before I torched it. She told me her boyfriend had wanted to come find me and have a word back when it happened, and that she'd talked him out of it, which somehow made me feel worse and better at the same time. It took a real while to come back from, and it should have. We got coffee, then a bit later on, we got coffee again. It wasn't instant, and I actively didn't want it to be, because instant would have meant it never really mattered in the first place, and it mattered more than almost anything. Bit by bit, slowly, the furniture all got dragged back to where it belonged in the room. The rest of the group was a whole lot less gentle about the entire thing than Zoe was, which is exactly how I knew for certain we were going to be fine. The running joke instantly became that I need a phone plan that comes with adult supervision built in. One of them still, to this day, introduces me to brand new people as the guy who deleted his own childhood best friend for a girl who had a Blake the entire time. I let him do it, every single time, because I earned that one completely fair and square, and there's no arguing it. One of them, the blunt one, sat me down at some point and said the quiet part out loud. Told me the scary thing wasn't that I got controlled, it was how fast I'd started defending it, repeating her lines like they were mine. Said the friends part I could fix, but I needed to figure out why I handed over the keys so easily in the first place. That stuck with me more than any of the jokes did, and he was right. The gym friend and most of the work friends drifted back around once I actually reached out and explained myself properly, without hiding behind somebody else's borrowed language about boundaries. The gym friend actually laughed when I explained, said she'd wondered why I'd gone cold and figured it was something like that, seen it happen to a guy before. A couple of them didn't come back around, and honestly that's just the tax on doing what I did to them. I don't get to stand here and complain about it. The ones who did come back never once made me grovel for it, which is its own quiet lesson about the difference between the people who love you and the people who manage you. Kayla eventually ran completely out of steam and stopped trying to reach me through every available side door. Last thing I heard through the grapevine, she's out there somewhere telling a version where she's the one who got mistreated and betrayed and blindsided, and I genuinely honestly hope that's working out okay for her. Me, I'm fine. Better than fine if I'm being straight about it, because I got my actual people back, and on top of that, I picked up something I flatly did not have going into any of this. I don't hand my opinion of myself over to whoever I happen to be dating anymore, full stop. When someone tells me a rule is about safety and respect and comfort, I now quietly check whether that exact same rule also happens to apply to the person handing it to me. It's genuinely wild how fast boundaries turn straight back into control the very second you calmly aim it the other direction. The thing that stays with me isn't even her. It's how easy I was to bend once someone framed the bending as love. A real partner never once needed me smaller or more alone, or cut off from the people who'd known me longest. Took losing everyone temporarily to actually understand that, which is a stupid way to learn it, but it's the way I learned it. I still talk to people of all kinds now, without running a background check first, and the right person hasn't had a single problem with it. Funny how that works out. Anyway, that's the whole thing, start to finish, no edits. If a person you've been seeing for a few months asks you to burn down a friendship you've had since you were 12 years old, just sit for one honest minute with why exactly that's suddenly the cost of admission. And if it turns out they've got a Blake quietly tucked away in the background the whole time they're asking you to do it, do yourself the one favor of reading the room all the way before you start deleting anybody who ever actually showed up for you. Zoe still won't let me hear the end of it, not even a little. Brings it up at least once a month, usually right in front of people who've never once heard the story. Timed perfectly for maximum possible damage to whatever dignity I've got left. Wouldn't have it any other way, honestly.